Doherty, and I'm the interviewer for Hands On Harwich. Today with me is Lee Culver. Lee Culver is the, now what exactly do you do with emergency planning?
I'm the Emergency Management Director for the Town of Harwich.
Emergency Management Director for the Town of Harwich, which means that whenever we have a problem, like a weather event,
Yep.
or a hazardous
Spill?
spill, or what I would call a declared emergency, who do they go to?
They go to Harwich Emergency Management.
Okay, and so Lee, tell us a little bit how this all got started.
Well, the Civil Defense Act of 1951 established that every community in the town, in the state of Massachusetts, would have an appointed emergency management director. And that's evolved over the years to now include Homeland Security based on recent events. Each town, mayor, board of selectmen appoints an individual to be the emergency management director. And I'm responsible for keeping the comprehensive emergency management plan up to date for the town of Harwich. I get involved if we have heavy snow, if we have a hazardous spill, we have a public health emergency, hurricanes, just about anything. And
Back in '51, I remember they used to call it civil defense, and and if you went up to Framingham, they had this enormous warehouse with cots, army blankets, and mattresses. We've come a long way, right?
we have. We are now, I am Harwich's representative to the Barnstable County Emergency Committee. And
Yes, you are.
Yes, we are.
Yes, you are.
And we've gone into our regional shelter plan.
Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Because I got the, at the last meeting, commission's meeting, they gave us a copy of the two-sided shelter in place.
Yep.
And I suppose, to me, the most important thing that I saw on that document was the circles. The 10-mile circle, which gets you to the canal.
Okay,
and
this
then
is
the
the
50-mile circle that encompasses the whole Cape.
I serve on that subcommittee on the Pilgrim plant. We gave out that information sheet so people would at least have some idea of what to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's independent of the regional shelter plan. Years ago, every community would open up their own shelter and have to pay for it. We're now gone to a plan where we have 6 shelters spread throughout the Cape, and the regional shelter for Harwich, Brewster, and Chatham is at the Cape Cod Tech High School up on 124.
Which happens to be down the street from where I live.
Yes.
And one of the things that I must say that a couple of years ago when we had the snow emergency,
Yes.
I took myself in hand and I walked down there and they had hot coffee and it was really great. So I got the hot coffee, filled up the thermos, and went back to the house because my wife was still there.
Yep.
Okay, but in any case, you know, that regional shelter and the facilities that they have at the Tech, and I suppose if push came to shove, we have the, now, I guess now it's a regional high school, that, you know, that would be a backup for that.
Well, the backup for the regional shelter is actually here at the community center,
Oh, at the community center.
because we have the generator here at the community center covers the whole building. There's nothing that's not powered up when this, if there's an emergency and the power goes down.
One of the issues, you know, that comes up is that, and I don't know how much you run into it, but in my house I have an electronic phone system, and I also have a little analog phone that's in the closet. God help me if I can't find it. That I can hook into the you know, the incoming landline, and during a time when we have an outage, at least I'd have phone service because of the 30-volt, you know, signal that's on the copper coming into the house. I know a lot of people don't think about that, and I wonder if you have in your instructions to folks as to whether or not you're telling people that they should have some type of an analog phone.
We've put that out there. One of the issues is I'm not sure that if you've gone to Comcast phone, whether or not an analog will work on that cable line.
You know, that's a good point.
I don't think it will.
Because if you go to fiber, there's no signal on
Right.
fiber, and in
Right.
order to support the fiber, you have to have some type of a battery backup.
Yep.
So yeah, I think they call it VoIP.
Yeah,
Okay, the VoIP is problematic during an emergency.
exactly. We try to address that a couple of ways. I try to push as much information out on Channel 18 as I can.
And what form does that take so people can look for it?
Jamie has put together some boards that get broadcast when we have certain emergencies that might be coming our way. I've done interviews on the spot if there's something I want to get out there really quickly. Years ago, we used to have the ability to break into people's TVs. We can't do that without going through the state. Now you have to go through the state. There's 2 people in the state that can authorize you an override.
And I bet you can find them fast in an
If we
emergency.
need to, if we need to.
yeah.
So we try to get people used to at least watching 18 a couple of 3 times a day just to see what's going on. We have an emergency alert system in town that we're trying to upgrade.
What form does that take?
Well, it's right now it's strictly telephone or cell phone. I'm trying to look at different systems to do telephone, home phones, cell phones, email addresses, and texting.
Now, is that like, I think I've heard it referred to as a reverse 911?
Yes, similar systems.
So what would happen if, because, we get a lot of crank calls.
Oh, yeah.
So what would happen typically as far as the kind of message you would get across to
Well,
an
your caller ID should come up Town of Harwich,
Okay,
and then my voice, or maybe Jamie, who is the public information officer for Harwich Emergency Management, would relate some information that, we have a Category 3 hurricane that's going to be hitting the area in 12 hours, or a severe snowstorm, where the shelters are, when they open, things like that.
so who helps you?
Well, all volunteers. Most of them are town employees that make up my team. Most of them are women. I have Paula Champagne, the health director. Carolyn Carey is the director here at the community center. Barbara Ann Foley is the volunteer coordinator, because we have about 110 volunteers that help us out with flu clinics, possibly could step in and work at the shelters, stuff like that.
At the county, they have a volunteer medical?
Medical Reserve Corps.
Are any of your folks tied in with that?
Some of them are, yes. And
Sure.
the Medical Reserve Corps also is part of the regional shelter plan.
Okay. One of the issues that had come up during a recent emergency was the folks that were evacuated from nursing homes and then brought to different shelters. And one of the things that they found out, in that particular instance, was they needed they were frail, and they needed some what I'd call professional support, and that seemed to be something we needed to address. So, considering that there's quite a few of us that are over 55, and perhaps be
Yours
using
included.
that kind of a facility, I wonder if your plans have included.
Well, in Harwich, we're really, really lucky. We have 3 assisted living facilities, Epic, the Royal, and Rosewood,
Okay.
who have helped me out numerous times when we've had to evacuate people. If they don't belong in the hospital, but they're not a real good candidate for the shelter, they'll take them in, they'll feed them, they'll make sure they got a bed, and they don't charge us or the person. They do it as a service to the town.
Well, I think that my sense is that when you live in this town, we look out for our own.
Yes, we do.
And that's a good thing.
Yep.
Okay, and so actually you have not only the volunteers that you have that report directly to you,
Yep.
but you have folks within the community that are interested in being helpful during an emergency.
Absolutely.
There was another thing that we talked about phone communication, and I know that there was one emergency that happened a couple of years ago where they had these walkie-talkies, and they also found out that they didn't have enough capacity at the cell tower, so they had to come up with some sort of a scheme for that. We have the cell tower over by the fire station in West Harwich. Is that what is the reliability factor, and how is that backed up over there?
The cell towers now that I'm aware of, at least all the cell towers in Harwich, all have generator backup,
Okay,
so that they won't go down. And
and who services those?
the vendors, depending upon who owns the tower.
Okay,
And through the federal government, one of the few things they've gotten right over the years is that these major phone carriers are required to provide to us a equipment if we're in a position where we have no communications. Verizon will bring in portable towers, generators, phones to help out emergency personnel.
I think people need to know that.
Oh, yeah,
because,
absolutely.
Because one of the, one of the concerns is that if you're in the middle of an emergency, especially if, if you're a frail elder, or if you're just home with your kids,
Yep.
you want to know what your alternatives
Yep.
are, and you want to know that there are ways of communicating in
Right.
case there is something
And
you need to cover.
the other asset that we have primarily on the Cape is a fantastic core of people that are into shortwave radio.
Ham
Yes,
operators, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
We have a spot in our EOC at the Public Safety Building for a ham operator. I put one at the tech school, and they can talk to Framingham, they can talk to Bridgewater, they can talk to any of the other shelters. And in some cases, that's the only form of communication, such as in Katrina.
Yeah.
They had no communications. We would at least have that type of communication. Everything else would be out.
That's wonderful. I had an opportunity to go to an open house for the Boy Scouts,
Yep.
and one of the badges they were promoting was that ham radio
Yep.
badge, which I think is wonderful. Of course, I was when I was in college, I was vice president of the amateur radio club,
Yep.
and my wife did not like me calling her an XYL, which means a former young lady.
Right.
Okay, so we've covered the communications piece. I wonder if you could go through describing what happened, in our most recent event, because I think the community center opened, but how did the word get out?
Well, I get notifications sometimes every 5 or 10 minutes about weather. We have the state has conference calls they have with emergency management directors. The REPC has conference calls with the area guys, and you have to make a decision. I usually conference with the town administrator, and we decide, and I usually pull my team into it, and decide which we're going to do. Are we going to open a shelter? Are we going to, if it's a declared state of emergency declared by the governor, that puts the emergency management director in charge, and it allows the municipality to spend money it hasn't budgeted. And we haven't done that probably in a couple of years.
What's the connection between that and the ICS? And the ICS is the Incident Command
That is a framework for how you operate during any incident. Usually there's a incident commander.
Yep.
Then you have logistics, you have communications, you have finance, you have operations, you have planning. All those things kick in if you're going to get into a long-term.
I think that
event.
people have to realize that in order to get the money back when the ICS comes up, Lee is responsible for documenting things that go on, because when it's all over, you get these questions. Well, why didn't you do this and why didn't you do that? So there's a lot of detail that you have to take.
Oh, there is. I mean, one of the big things that I have every year with department heads here in town is document, because the governor can do a state of emergency, but the state has no funds to reimburse the cities and towns.
We've noticed that.
The only way we can possibly get reimbursement is if the president declares, and there's a money factor involved on when he'll declare a state of emergency. But over the last 3 or 4 years, we've probably recovered pretty close to 100 grand in monies that we've spent for various things.
Well, I think money spent to take care of your own is money well spent.
Absolutely.
Because it's being safe and telling folks that that there is a pathway to maintain your safety during an emergency. I think is crucial. To not only your comfort level, but to feel good about living in a good place.
That's true. That's very true.
If someone wanted to volunteer and participate, what would they do?
I would have them get a hold of Barbara Ann Foley at the Council on Aging,
Okay,
and she will take it from there.
all right. And what type of steps do they have to go through in order to qualify?
They'd have to be Corey checked.
Tell people what Corey is.
Corey check is they check your criminal background. To see if you have a criminal background, you'd have to sign a waiver, and that would allow Barbara Ann to go to the state to have your background checked, because obviously there are certain individuals that we don't want in our volunteer corps. That's what a Cory check is check of your criminal background.
And the reason why you want to do that ahead of time is that during the emergency, and a lot of folks sort of get, or we want to be helpful, is that we have to protect the people, our citizens.
That's right.
And
That's right.
And although we welcome your interest, we'd like to, I think Lee, isn't the phrase, we'd like you to show up ahead of time so that we can
Exactly.
vet you out and make sure that the help that you're offering is help that is useful.
Right.
Okay, we talked about if I was stuck at my house and I couldn't get out and I had to get to a shelter, how would you do that?
We would set up a phone line that you could call.
Mm-hmm.
We use the COA bus to transport people to shelters.
Okay.
Obviously, if it's an emergency, please dial 911, but 911 is for emergencies. Police and fire always don't have the answers. We try to get the information out ahead of time so that you know what's going on, when the shelter's opening. If you need transportation, the numbers to call. By calling police and fire, you just tie up their phone lines. It's the same when power goes out. They have no idea when the power's coming back. If you are without power, then you need to call a power company and let them know.
Staying with the power, Lee, what is the priority of restoration with regard to the town buildings?
Each town sets up a priority list. Obviously, our priority list is the public safety facility on Sisson Road, the East Harwich Fire Station, water pump areas,
Oh, yeah.
our well fields, the landfill, because you don't need the trash piling up, you need to get it compacted. Schools are on there, but they're down the list a bit.
I would suspect the kids stay home.
Yeah, the three nursing homes in town, the three assisted living facilities are in town. Town hall is on the list. This building's on the list.
Is the library on the list?
Probably not, but that's a whole new arm of emergency management that we've been investigating the last couple of years. We're looking at libraries to be centers that people can come by and get information if they need to apply for a small business loan or grants or things like that.
Just anecdotally, I sit on a national committee, and libraries in other counties are an important part of the for what you just said. To be, because librarians tend to be in touch with the people on a regular basis, whereas folks like us, if you're having a problem, will see us, but you don't see us on a regular basis. And they also have, when we put in, what was it, Open Cape?
Yeah.
Okay, the connection to public safety and the connection to the library is there, so that folks would know that the library would be a place you could go to get some more information.
Right. And I've been working with Ginny
Yeah.
Hewitt, and we're in the process of. She's got a whole area in the library was set up for emergency management, pamphlets and information, and her reference librarians up to date on certain places to go for information. So that'll be it's a good working partnership.
So if they can't find you, you can go to the library.
Exactly.
And get and find out what's going on.
Exactly.
What kind of shape is the town in as far as particular areas that that are vulnerable?
Well, any place along the shore, you have to be really aware that south of Route 28 is an area that could possibly flood. I mean, it's been a long time since we've had to actually ask people to evacuate, but those would be the areas that I'd look at when we're getting, if we were to get a hurricane. You'd have to look at the areas along the water and in East Harwich along the water.
Of course, I look at the signs in front of my house that say you're entering a flood area, but we won't go into that part of it.
No.
And the flood area actually is just along the roadway,
Right.
which needs better drainage,
Right.
and so forth. But that's really not an emergency.
Right.
The real issue is that people can look at maps, and I think the Cape Cod Commission, for example, has maps of areas that that are vulnerable. So if they go on the Cape Cod Commission web page, they can get to that point and see.
And the Town of Harwich people can go onto the town website and
That's right.
see our flood maps.
Well, That's true.
Yeah.
And so there's lots of resources
Oh,
to get the
absolutely.
information that,
Absolutely.
that you need.
But they need to do it ahead of time.
Over and over again, prior preparation prevents poor performance, as they say. And it's very important because we are a seacoast community. We are a community that juts out into the ocean. As a matter of fact, if you go up into a satellite from outer space, you can see Cape Cod because it's down there. It is a defined area, and we're right at the elbow of Cape Cod, right in the middle, as they say. So, if you are, if you are concerned about what would you do in case something happens, you know that you can't get across the bridge. Although, and by the way, I'll express a certain amount of frustration about the money that they spent on signs about evacuation. There's only one way out of here, and the fact that they've spent money on signs, really chilled me.
Those signs were more for summer people and hurricane evacuation versus something happening at the power plant. As you probably remember, Hurricane Bob.
Oh, yes, I do.
Traffic was backed up to the Orleans Rotary.
And I remember all the salt that killed all the bushes.
People just need to, if you're going to leave Cape Cod, you can't leave the day before the storm gets here because you'll never get off the island.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's important to have a communications plan. It's important to have a to-go kit where you can just throw it in your car and either.
What would be in a to-go kit?
Well, it's important to have money. We've all been trained now to use our ATM cards every time we need something.
Oh my God, the ATM card won't work because
Exactly.
there's no power
No
there.
power, no cash.
So they have
So
about
you
$50 around, huh?
Could have cash,
Yeah.
medications,
Medications.
clothes. If you have a pet, you got to have food for your pet. You got to have your vaccination records for your pet. Book or something to keep yourself busy because
We're not going to entertain you.
no, we're not going to entertain you at the shelter, and it's probably one of the most boring places to be. So games, board games, especially if you've got kids, all those things are really, really important to have. If you have a Fido Life card that the COA gives out, you should probably bring that just in case, the fire department needs to deal with an issue.
Okay.
It's all common sense stuff, but it's
Common sense stuff.
It's stuff that people neglect to do.
Yeah, we'll sort of do that later. But later is now. So
Yep.
as we think about it, there is no time of the year when you should not consider it, but it's most important that you consider it when you're taking a look at what kinds of things would you need in case of emergency. There are places to go where you can find the information at the library that we mentioned, or you could call into the town and Lee would be in a position to respond. But with that, we come to the end of these programs, and one of the things I'd like to ask is, what would be the major takeaway that you would give people? What would you want them, more than anything else, to do?
To have a communications plan and to have that to-go kit ready to go. And know whether you're going to evacuate or not. And if you're going to evacuate to a shelter, know where it's at. Or if you're going to evacuate to a friend or a family's home, know how to get there and be ready to go. Don't wait till the last minute, because if you wait till the last minute, you're going to get stuck.
Yep. So with that, I want to thank the viewers for watching another issue of a program on Hands On Harwich, and hope that you take advantage of the information that we try to give you. Thanks for watching Hands On Harwich. I'm Bill Doherty, and this is Lee Culver, your Director of Emergency Management.